Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next class on the six flavors of emptiness. It's sort of a continuing series of shorter videos here for our Mahamudra course, or the study of the emptiness of the mind, or Vipassana, superior seeing, seeing sort of the ultimate nature of things, emptiness, but in particular the ultimate nature of the mind. So this is class 4 on basically the fourth out of 6 flavors of emptiness. So we'll start just with Heart Sutra here. Homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I have heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir and Mass Vultures Mount, together the great assembly of monks and nuns, the great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Sri Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, was looking perfectly at the practice of profound perfection and wisdom, looking perfectly also at the 5 aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Sri Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Sri Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly also the 5 aggregates being him even inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is none other than form, and form is also none other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They are produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement, have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element and so forth up to no mentality element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so forth up to no aging and death and no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there's no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing utterly beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the 3 times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection, wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequal mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection, wisdom is proclaimed, Tayatam Gata Gata Paragata Parsam Gati Bodhisoha. Shariputra, bodhisattva, great being, should train the profound perfection wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose to that concentration, said to Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, that he'd spoken well. Good, O son, just like that. Since it's like that, just as you have revealed, in that way the profound perfection wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Sri Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Let's just take a moment to take refuge from our heart here, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, in particular, taking refuge in the emptiness represented by all 3, Buddha being sort of the example of the being that has realized emptiness directly, sort of the supreme doctor, Buddha nature, the nature of Buddha's mind being emptiness, nature of our own mind being emptiness, so our own Buddha nature being the same. Dharma being the medicine that's given by the supreme doctor, which is emptiness, the ultimate medicine for all of our sufferings, sort of overcoming all of our self-cherishing and self-grasping mind that's the source of all of our suffering and samsara. And Sangha, the community of those beings who are seeing emptiness directly or helping one another see emptiness directly, sort of moving all sentient beings along to this path of self-actualization. And just a motivation of great compassion, bodhicitta. May everything we do here together be cause for enlightenment of all beings, for all of us, all sentient beings, realize emptiness directly as a way of ending all of our sufferings. Okay, so welcome. Just teaching a little class here from my hotel room in London, the famous haunted hotel. I could just have a whole video just on ghost stories about this hotel. Seen a lot of ghosts in my life. That's sort of another thing I could do, sort of the chid video of all the different ghost stories that I have in this life. Anyhow, so we're moving on here. Just a shorter video. This is actually one of the shorter flavors of emptiness, basically. It's the 4th flavor, which is, if you could sum up, being our judgments and concepts are relative things. So basically what we talked about last time in 3 was we've gone from the Vaibhashika school to the Sautrantika school, Logicist school, to mind only or Yogacara school. So this is another sort of view of emptiness from the mind only school, Yogacara school. So we talked about last time the first flavor is that everything is impermanent, things change. So when we're meditating on our mind, we see that contrary to what we normally have in our day-to-day experience, where we think we are sort of this unchanging thing stuck in a world like a container dropping a marble into a bucket of unchanging things and objects that we're interacting with, and that, and other people we're interacting with and usually might be against us or we're struggling with. We see that actually everything changes. Everything's sort of a flow of interconnected causes and effects and relationships and systems that are always changing in most of ourselves. So this counteracts sort of our self-grasping mind, where we always sort of grasp ourselves as to be sort of the one center of gravity, center of reality, sort of over and against the world. Rather, we, like all things, are in a flow of changing things, of changing flux or flow of becoming. Secondly, we're going a little deeper, but things nevertheless, even in this flow, are sort of being forced on you or sort of overflowing your means and conceptions of kind of controlling them, systematizing them, ordering them, manipulating them. We start to see that we ourselves are included in this sort of flow of flux that is happening sort of in a process outside of our control, bigger than our individual little sort of empirical and psychological egos. It's more the Sautrantika view here, just a flow of phenomena and relationships, dharmas and so forth, that again, we're trying to represent to ourselves or control or label or whatever, manipulate. And there's a big difference between our attempts and our sort of picture of the world and how it really is. That's sort of coming at you, overflowing. Taking this deeper into the third view of emptiness, we can see this even when we're meditating, on our mind. We're seeing sort of our thoughts and feelings, flow of our experience. Everything's changing. Things are happening to you. You're not sort of actively producing them at each moment. And then from a Yogacara point of view, there's a relationship between your mind and the objects that it's cognizing, that they're actually coming from the same source or same seed, right? Mind and its intentional object go together in one relationship. So it's not like there's you and then the world happening to you. It's like your mind and then things are kind of floating by you or whatever, unrelated to you. It's quite the opposite. Out of a source, you and the world are coming, sort of like a welling up, like a basically like a spring. You and the world are coming at the same time. And so it's a lot of construction. There's always construction on this hotel in London. Anyway, so in other words, the world is you. You are the world. Not like your empirical ego, your small little ego, but in the sense that your mind and the world are as part of the same process or the same thing, coming from the same source or same seed. So that's what we see in the Chittamantram point of view, that on the conventional nature of reality, we have the best way to understand a whole world of relationships of cause and effect is in terms of the analogy of dependent arising, which we get like, from a seed comes a flower. So from a seed, how the flower becomes manifest or expresses itself, it's through all sorts of factors that are not itself. So the seed needs the sunlight and the fertilizer and the soil and the water and everything else. So in a similar kind of way, in sort of our conventional world here, from a Yogacara point of view, we have mind and objects in a dependent relationship with one another. We have causes and conditions, or wholes and parts, sets that are all related to one another. Then on an ultimate point of view, and sort of we would claim the emptiness point of view from the Chittamantram point of view, is mind itself just as pure awareness, what they call the eightfold, eighth consciousness, Alaya Vijnana or Kushi, which is basically almost like the backdrop empty stage or empty screen of mind on which all sort of the details are playing out. It's the computer screen on which you're watching your videos, the videos being sort of your life, the movie of your life. So we see this even with Mahamudra when we just have mind meditating on mind, just the awareness, sort of unfabricated awareness or natural mind here. We're seeing all the different things happening, sort of like a video or movie happening to us. So the emptiness, what we see is the dependent arising of those things are empty of an individual self conventionally, but ultimately that emptiness is anything, mind is empty of everything that is not just this pure awareness. So this mind that is, pre-personal, anonymous, pre-objective, because it gives rise to objectivity, is empty of everything else that is not itself. And this is where, this is a whole other, you could be on here for weeks talking about what they call the Shentong view of emptiness in Tibetan Buddhism, very much influenced by this line of reasoning. Which is the other what they call greater Madhyamika school in Tibet, which is very, very popular as sort of a system of understanding emptiness in the Nyingma and Kagyu schools and Rime schools in the sort of non-allied, non-sectarian movement in Eastern Tibet in the 19th century, which is a fascinating topic. It's excellent to study this kind of stuff. So anyway, that's what we mean by emptiness when we're talking Madhyamika. The Yogacara view of emptiness, but also it's kind of interesting. The fourth view of emptiness, Yogacara always says there's basically three modes of existing, kind of three realities we can talk about. Talk about conventional reality, and we can talk about ultimate reality. Conventional reality being the six sense consciousnesses, your five senses and the six mental consciousness with their appropriate objects arising from the same seed. That's what makes conventional reality. Then we have the eighth consciousness, or storehouse or foundational consciousness, like I've talked about, which is ultimate reality. Like that, we say that that's kind of like the bedrock of it, what truly exists. And they're very clear that in this school, that's what truly exists. The conventional reality of objects and minds and their objects appear to truly exist, but again, they're relative or conventionally existing because their mode of appearance and their ontological status, in other words, the way they seem and the way they really are different. They look like they're truly existent, but actually because they're relative and interdetermined with one another, they're conventionally or relatively existent. Alaya Vijnana, storehouse consciousness, how its mode of existence and its appearance are the same thing. It's mind as sort of the foundationless foundation of reality. So its appearance and its nature are the same thing, clear cognition. So what's in the middle? What's the third? Well, they call sort of the realm of fantasy, the realm of conceptuality, a realm of conceptuality, the imagination, for instance, you could say. So this sort of third intermediary between these two is the problematic area. So in Yogacara, they'll often talk about a seventh, or Klishta or deluded consciousness, which is that this is your deluded mind, the sort of intermediary mediation between the six consciousnesses and the eighth consciousness that through your Buddhist practice ends up dropping away. And this sort of screen or veils, almost like if you're putting sort of somewhat transparent tissue paper over everything. So things are kind of, or a light gauze on everything, your deluded conceptual mind. And this conceptual mind is the one that, number one, sees mind and its objects or experiences being truly existent in a deluded way, but also doesn't see that your ultimate nature is this storehouse consciousness. So you're sort of stuck in this kind of netherworld of your deluded conceptual mind. And this is what this sort of self-grasping mind, thinking that your concepts, your views, your judgments, your conjectures, your whole paradigm of reality is the way it is necessarily universally so, always already true, is what allows you to have your self-grasping mind and hence your self-cherishing mind, and hence all your suffering and samsara. So this is the thing that's got to go. And it's interesting because so the view of emptiness is that things ultimately are empty of this. In other words, what we see when we're doing good mind-only school meditation is this sevenfold consciousness is fallacious, it's false, it's not real. It's just your imagination, right? It's just your conjecture, just your judgments, which are relative. Your view on your thoughts, your view on reality is just yours. And mediation or sort of conceptual overlay that you're putting on consciousness and its objects, this kind of take or interpretation of things, is just that. It is just a take or interpretation. But the point is, dilutedly, you never see it that way. So Roshi Berniglass, that famous Zen teacher who I love, he's just so wonderful. A friend of mine, I think she gone to some of his classes, or maybe her mom did, I can't remember. But she said that Roshi Berniglass, one of his favorite expressions, because he's kind of like an old hippie from the 60s, right, studying with Suzuki Roshi, was anytime they talk about whatever, just the world or politics or something, he'd say something. Then he'd go, just my opinion, man. Just my opinion, man. And, it's very cool. But the point is, that's true from a Yogacara point of view. When you're in the sevenfold consciousness, that's just how things are. The point is, though, they don't look that way. All of us, when we're sort of pushed, if you're arguing with people or talking with people late night at a party or over Thanksgiving dinner, all of us in the 21st century, just like in the 20th century, believe that our perceptions are relative, our judgments are relative, not founded this and that, compared to other times or epochs in human history or Western history. So we'll all say this, oh yeah, quantum mechanics, I know, or whatever, everything's socially constructed or blah, 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 all these kind of modern mouthwashes. But in your day-to-day life, when you're actually out there in the world shopping or doing whatever you have to do at work or meeting people running around downtown, practically you don't believe this. Practically you believe that all of your judgments and all of your interpretations and take on your life deployed practically are always true, and not just true necessarily, like in the Greek idea of episteme or knowledge, that something has to be universal and necessary, like geometry or mathematics. Our prejudices, our biases, we always take to be universal and necessary. So my take on politics, my take on my family, my take on what's happening around me, my take on my job, my take on world history or world culture, whatever, economics, whatever you want to say, my take is universal, that basically if everyone just sat down and thought about it, they'd agree with me that it's true. And then it's necessarily true. It's not going to be sort of upended or revised or somehow added to at a later date. It's universal and necessary. So this is what puts us squarely in this sort of imaginary realm of this conceptual overlay onto our world of a flow of minds and objects. And this is what creates so much of our suffering, because we're, of course, always acting on these views, on our judgments, in regards to how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves. And so we suffer. I mean, ironically, everything, as we'll see in Madhyamika Prasangika, everything is the imagination. So we would say here, too, almost in Yogacara, yeah, everything's the imagination. But the problem is on the diluted level here, imagination does not take itself as such. Your views, your judgments do not take themselves as being mere relative views or judgments produced by your karma or by your background or your limited biases and filters. That's precisely the case. And so we have to see that the emptiness is that things truly, the universal necessary attitude you have towards your own judgments. So this is very practical, because when you really cash it out on your day-to-day life, you almost have to stop yourself by acting. There's no such thing as not being in a world where we don't have judgments, because I'm judging. This is a book. I'm thirsty. I need a cup of tea here. Oh my God, what time is it? I actually have to get going soon and go to work. We're making judgments about how things are the way they are all the time. But the point is, we don't see that we're the ones making them. We don't see that our judgments are coming from us. We think that we're actually perceiving them as part of the world, that they're out there separate from us, that we're just sort of like turning the page and there they are, when really we're producing them. And from a Yogacara point of view, unlike Madhyamika that we'll see, these things in the mind-only school are sort of separate from the world, from your mind and the world. It's sort of this netherworld in between place, which isn't very real, which is why they'll say that you see sort of in a lot of meditations. Yogacara very much influenced Zen, very much influenced a lot of Tibetan lineages as well, is that the claim is that conceptuality itself is something you have to get past. Maybe not necessarily in a bigger view that, you know, conceptuality is somehow evil, but the point is you have to see conceptuality as conceptuality, right? As limited determinations of things, how you're determining, how you're filtering, how you're seeing things. So to see that this is just you. And so I can get past it. I can see that it's not necessary, that it's not universal, and that it's something I'm adding to the mix. And so, how am I adding to it? What am I adding to it? Do I have to add to it? I mean, this is the whole thing. Again, a lot of meditation systems would say the more the meditate, less the more you meditate, the less concepts you have or thinking. In the sense you don't have this autocritical commentary, almost like subtitles to a movie in your day-to-day life. So if you know, when you're watching a movie, you have all subtitles. And a lot of times people have subtitles now because they're whatever, doing different things. They don't want to listen. They want to see on the screen. So this sevenfold consciousness is like subtitles all the time, like the judgments you're having. And subtitles like for hearing impaired, where they'll even say like incidental music, loud bang, people fighting, or like, you know, they'll actually not just give the spoken word, but they'll give a context for the actual what's happening on the screen. We have to, from a Yogacara point of view, turn the subtitles off, right? Then we see just conventional reality of the flow of mind and its objects, flow of experience, and then we can get to the ultimate reality that there's just pure awareness, and this pure awareness is selfless. It is Buddha mind. Once I'm on that level, this is sort of the last teachings that Buddha gave, the third turning wheel of Dharma, Vasali, that mind is luminous. What would the world be like if I just see everything as pure awareness? What it would be like if I see the world, my mind is a sheer openness to all things, not having any self or definition. This is almost like Sattva in the sense that he would say that from the no thingness or nothingness of the mind, that it has no quality, it's not just producing like a take on objects, but it's producing the self. The self is an object that kind of rides like a surfboard over the ocean of the mind. Now, if that's the case, what Sattva would say, the most important thing to see with that is the self and the mind aren't the same thing. And so the self is something that you create, you're responsible for. This mind, because it has no definition, is absolutely unconstrained or free. So you can be anything, but also you're responsible for everything you do. But from a Buddhist point of view, from a Mahamudra point of view, what if we say the same thing about ourselves in a Sartrean way? What if we look at the eightfold consciousness, if the no thingness of mind is just sheer awareness, that I don't have to create this self all the time that I'm invested in, this kind of persona or kind of puppet that I'm putting out into the world that's running around doing things. And look at me, I'm this, I'm that. What if I can just rest in awareness? What's that like? What happens if I see everything from that standpoint? So this is why we do a Mahamudra, watching our thoughts, watching our feelings, watching our perceptions. What's it like if I see it from that point of view? So first step is I have to get this conceptual subtitles out of the way. The fourth flavor of emptiness, I have to sort of wipe that, like as then clean the mirror. It's like in the bathroom, you have all the dirt and gross stuff on the mirror, use your Windex, clean, then ding, oh my goodness, I can see myself, just the bare reflection of the mirror. What's it like if we do that? And that's our homework. Okay, so let's just dedicate this for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May this be a cause for the awakening of all sentient beings, and may we sort of be able to realize the ultimate nature of our mind. Okay, thank you, and we'll see you next time.